Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, we are going to preview the quarterback position for the 2024 fantasy football season, and I am doing something a little different this year. I'm bringing on some of our top players, some of our top contest winners, and we're going to preview the positions together. So I thought we'd give you some insight into these great players and what they're thinking for this season. And for today's show, we have Brad Petri, the second ranked fantasy player on our site. He won the TFC in 2022, so he took home $500,000 in 2022 for his big win. He is a great player. If you've been on our site for any length of time, you're familiar with Brad. He's a great guy, a great player, and we're going to get his thoughts on the quarterback position. I'm going to bring him up right now. Brad, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, Brad. So the quarterback position this year, I think it's an intriguing one. It's really deep, in my opinion, with a lot of good players, some young players, and you have some veterans that are good as well. So my first question to you is just in general, how do you approach the position come draft day?
Well, quarterback, I kind of like to see the flow of the draft. I mean, I've got maybe 10 that I don't want to get past those as a starter. And you know, I tend to want to build a team first before I start looking for a quarterback. The only one that I've really taken early this year is Josh Allen, and early for me is round 4. Okay, I don't even think about one before that him, and after that I don't really start thinking again until about round 6, unless there's a stacking possibility for some reason in round 5. But I won't. I very seldom take anybody who's between 6, and quite often my quarterbacks are taken in around 8, 7, late. So I like building my team with the other positions. And I kind of lag on tight end too. So I don't. That's just my. I mean, this year way it's falling. There's been. And when you do a lot of drafts, you kind of see the flow of them, and there's some guys that's moving up now at quarterback position, and there's some guys falling, and I kind of look at those, and I want to position myself where I'm not too far off of the top 10. Preferably I like to maybe one that's ranked a little bit higher than the top 10, but I'm okay with that.
You sound very similar to me in how I approach it, Brad. I'm kind of the same way with the tight end position too. I like to kind of wait on that position a little bit, maybe kind of pair them a little bit in those, 8 to 9 rounds, maybe go back-to-back QB or back-to-back tight end and go that way. I'm not going to go too early, but I don't know about you, but I've done a lot of drafts as well. And I feel like sometimes the QBs get pushed up. It just depends what room you're in. And other times they fall down. So when they fall down a little bit, I will take a chance. I actually got Patrick Mahomes in round 5 in a draft a couple weeks ago, and I had no intention of taking him, but I just felt like the value was too good. So it's just kind of like you. I kind of go with the flow. I'm not going to really reach too early and get a quarterback most drafts, but if they're there and they fall and the way the draft is going, I may take a chance on them.
Yeah, the most recent TFC, I kind of shocked that Stroud fell to round 8.
Wow.
And I took Jackson in 6, in the middle of 6. But if you were to give me the option to get another player in the middle of 6 and know that Stroud's going to be sitting there in round 8, I would rather have done that. I mean, but that's the point. You don't know. There's a lot of consistency in our TFC drafts because of a lot of the same players. But every now and then you will get a different competitor, and sometimes things will change up a little bit, and you don't know that. One things I do find out difficult is being on the ends. If you're on the end, sometimes I feel like you got to take one a little bit earlier, because they're not. If you look, and there's 6 guys in between you and the next two picks, you may have to draft a little earlier. So the 11 and 12 spot's not really my ideal position to be. So sometimes I have to go, well, there's no way these 3 guys are going to come back to you, so you're going to have to make a call earlier. So in that sense, I prefer to be in the middle of the draft.
I think that's a great point, Brad, because sometimes where you pick dictates how you end up, how you're team ends up stacking, and you just don't know what's going to happen if you're picking on the end and those runs happen. Same thing with tight end, maybe a little bit as well. So I think that's a great point you make there, Brad. I want to talk about targets. We're going to give different categories. So we're going to do a target, a fade, a sleeper, and then talk about a rookie we might like. You mentioned you don't really have any targets because you kind of just go with the flow, but maybe talk about the importance of tiering your rankings, because it sounds like that's what you do. And it could be very important, especially when it comes to quarterback position.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if Josh Allen to me is the number one. Like I said, he usually goes in around 4 or 3, maybe sometimes going 1 and draft the other in a different spot, different place. But I see him. I thought, come on, that's getting a little ridiculous. But there are people out there that pound the table and they want their guy, and that's what they're going to get. So that's fine. In my world, that's silliness, but that's okay with me. That draft, right? So, yeah, I mean, Josh Allen. Then you got Hurts, Mahomes, and Jackson probably the next thing. One thing I found interesting at RT is that Anthony Richardson seems to be moving up sometimes ahead of those couple of those other guys. Haven't quite figured that out yet. I know there's upside there. There's a great potential there, and I know the rankings that the RT has got listed to have him ahead of Jackson, which I'm not quite sure about that either. But so be it. But yeah, I mean, those guys are probably in the next group, and then Prescott and Burrow was kind of after. I like Stroud before Richardson, to be honest. So that works out for me sometime. Now that was flipped not too long ago, and of course I'm one of those guys that's been drafting since the onset of the year. So there's much less fluctuation now than there was before. I mean, early in this year you get different people, and I think there's a pretty consistent way that people are drafting quarterbacks in particular order right now. But I'm perfectly happy to get Prescott and Burrow in rounds 8 and 9 if they fall that far. Like I said, Stroud went 8 the other night, which was would have been nice to have. Then I like Murray. Murray and Love's probably my 9th and 10th.
Okay.
Not really in any particular order. I don't love those two, but I'm okay with them. And last year you had Purdy, you had Goff, Tua, but Baker Mayfield was a top 10 quarterback.
That's true. Yep.
So you can win. You can win with somebody else. I think Purdy's probably one of those guys that, you know what, if those other ones are gone, or because sometimes people double tap on quarterbacks before round 10, and Purdy's okay with me in the later 11, 12, whatever round it may be. So I don't know that I do have tiers, I guess you were saying, but I'm here with one with Josh Allen, then maybe three of them in round tier 2, and a couple in 2 or 3 and 3, tier 3, and then like I said, 11 Murray's probably my ending two that I would love to have a top 10 one, but I don't necessarily feel like it's necessary.
Yeah, I think you can win with a multitude of strategies at quarterback for sure. I'll give you one of my targets that I like this year. One guy I'm trying to get a lot is Dak Prescott, just because I like the value. 3rd overall in fantasy quarterback scoring last year. He had a monster year, best numbers of his career. He's in a contract season as well. He has a lot to play for. He led the league in passing touchdowns last year. He actually led all of football in on-target percentage as well. 2nd overall in bad throw percentage. So he was very accurate last year. I do not like their running back situation at all. I think they're going to throw a lot. Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, I just don't trust them. Prescott's ADP is 82.96 right now. That makes him the 9th quarterback off the board. So kind of as you mentioned, he's near the end of that elite tier in my opinion, and you can get him a lot later than some of the guys I think he could finish ahead of. So for the value, I just love Prescott this year. And also, great schedule for the playoffs. It is 3rd easiest for the fantasy playoffs and 50 the easiest overall as well for the regular season. So I think Prescott has a lot going for him. I know he's a polarizing figure for Cowboys fans a little bit, but I don't mind that when it comes to my fantasy team. And he's one of my targets this year. I like him a lot.
Yeah. like I said early, I was getting him in like ninth round consistently because I don't mind having him or Burrow. I don't really. I like those. I don't know what you're looking at that he's going behind, but if he's going behind Love and Murray, I'd rather have Prescott if
Yep.
that's who he's falling behind. But yeah, I mean, that's if I knew I could have him every draft in round 9, that'd be wonderful. Sometimes he goes in 7, and if I have Lamb, I may take him a little bit earlier because the contracts for both of them are figured out, which I'm sure they will be. Um, you know, there's a lot of points between those two players.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about the opposite side of things, fades. So is there any quarterback this year that you don't like? You're kind of just staying away from because that's a little different than targeting in my opinion. So anybody you're out on.
Well, I'm not really out on it. I mean, if you're talking about the top 10, I'll take any one of those. I don't. There's not really a. I mean, I like Purdy as well. I mean, it's just an equal as maybe Love or Murray, just my own mind. Both of Love's got a lot of young weapons. Murray's weapons. He's very young. He's a rookie, the main one. Got McBride. So I mean, I don't really have any I'm trying to fade away from. But like I said, my strategy is to get one of those top 10 ones. But
Mm-hmm.
but in all actuality, the way I draft, I like to have two pretty good ones. So you might see me go 9 and 12. I mean, at quarterback, or 9 and 11. I've done that. I've done 9-10 before. I've done 6 and 8. I mean, if the I know I'm going to take two quarterbacks regardless,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not one of these guys going to take one in round 5 and one in round 19. That's not who I am, because most of my teams have been successful having a good backup quarterback because unfortunately there's injuries at the quarterback position and you've got to be ready for that. So you know I've got it. I usually have two decent ones. They may not be the best two, but they're both capable starters for me.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give you a fade though, a guy I'm not too high on. I don't like Justin Herbert this year. I love the talent. I think he's great, but he has Harbaugh as his coach now. Always been pretty conservative. I think they're going to be more run heavy. He lost his top 2 receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams as well. I don't think they did a good job of replacing those guys also. So I think he's going to be kind of a boomer bust weekly play. Love the talent. Don't like the situation at all. It's one guy I'm kind of steering clear of. I'll let somebody else take him. I love his talent, like I mentioned, but just not big on Justin Herbert this year. I'll let someone else take him come draft day.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I wouldn't consider him a top 12 quarterback. So maybe
Oh
that's
yeah,
maybe that's the reason I'm saying I didn't even think about fading him. You're correct. I mean, they're going to run the ball for the most part. They've got the wide receiver positions not. I mean, they got Lad McConkey. I don't. He's a good player. I don't know what he's going to do for him as far as. Yeah. I mean, I I guess when I consider fade, I don't consider him really a fade. He'd be a fill in for me, but he wouldn't be one of those I definitely don't target. And some people do. They like to get him as their first quarterback, and I don't see that as a viable option. Could be wrong,
yeah,
but
for sure. So let's talk about guys outside that top 10, 12 range that you've kind of been mentioned. So any sleepers, any guys that you might take a chance on late in the draft if you end up getting maybe Josh Allen early and you want to wait on QB for your second one. Is there anybody you kind of been targeting in that group that goes towards, in that 20-ish range ADP? Anybody you like there for this year?
I don't know his range. I mean, I got a lot of Caleb Williams in 12 and 13, just because if he's any good at all, he's got a great wide receiving core. I mean,
For sure.
the Bears don't have the greatest history with quarterbacks, so there's something to be said about that.
Hmm.
A poor history with quarterbacks, but he's in a position. If he's any good at all, he should succeed. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe Trevor Lawrence might surprise some people. I don't mind taking him. I mean, he's not one of the top 15, probably 16 that's drafted. Now he lost Ridley, but they've got Kirk was injured towards the end, and so was Trevor Lawrence, who's down. He was injured. He struggled through a couple of those games. He wasn't healthy and played. So they got Brian Thomas and they Gabe Davis for what it's worth. So I mean, he might be one that's worth some late. I mean, I've got several of him late, not in the 12 range, further down the road. Some people like Kirk Cousins, which I like him, but then they do something that's kind of contrary to you thinking he's going to have and drafting a rookie at 8. So I don't know. I mean, the 12 through 16, 17 quarterbacks, I usually get one of those. Lately, it's been Caleb Williams, but I'm open to any of those guys.
Okay, so for me, if I'm going to go early and get Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, like you mentioned, I kind of like Will Levis later. I think he's intriguing just because I think he's set up kind of like Caleb Williams. They did a lot to help him this offseason. They got Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, 2 good pass catching backs, and Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. Derrick Henry's gone, so I don't think it's going to be ground and pound with them this year. I think it's going to be more of a pass heavy offense, and that bodes well for Levis. He has a big arm, showed some good potential last year. So I'm not comfortable using him as a number 1, but if I'm getting a solid starter, I'm going to take a chance on Levis. I think he's got some potential this year, and kind of like Williams, I think they did well, that front office and surrounding him with talent. So I'm kind of anxious to see what happens with him this year.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say I have one share of him. I guess if you want to win the big money, you got to differentiate yourself from people. But I get what you're saying, because I like for some reason I like Okonkwo as the tight end a little bit now.
Yeah,
I'm going to throw a little bit more. So, and he actually got better with Levis. So, I get what you're saying, but if I got Mahomes, I still want somebody else that's gonna be. So that's how I think about that. Like I said, I've taken 9, 10. I got this thing in my mind where if I take 2 quarterbacks, if I take like 9, 11, that's 20 to me. I'm throwing away around 10 pick. That's how I think. So that's okay with me. Okay?
gotcha.
So, if I take a 3 and a 6, that means I'm throwing away a 4 or 5, and that doesn't make sense to me if I take 2 early quarterbacks. So I don't have any problem taking 2 quarterbacks in the top 12 rounds. I have absolutely no issue doing that, because but when I usually do that, I'm getting them a decent, like you said, why might I take Prescott and Purdy at 9 and 12, and that's okay with me. Those are winning quarterbacks.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about this rookie class now. There's definitely going to be some rookies starting this year. You already mentioned you have a lot of stock of Caleb Williams. So I'm assuming he's your favorite rookie target. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, he'd be the one I would take, only because of the situation. So I know some like Jaden Daniels because he's a runner. So, he could, but I can't see that team being as loaded in the skill positions as perhaps the Bears are, or what the Bears should be. And they've got Komet's a decent tight end for the Bears as well, and Swift, and they had a lot more to him than what Fields had to operate with. And so I would think they've set him up for success. I don't know about Daniels so much. Some people like him first, and those 2 you obviously go 1-2 in the 2-1 whatever as the rookies off the board in the drafts. But I mean, I like them both, but I would sway towards the Williams if I had to pick a rookie. Now, I don't have him as my starter on any team, so I want to get clear. I'm not sitting there going, well, he's going to be there in round 11 or 12. I'm going to take him as my starter. That's not what I've done. I've always had somebody else. If I did take him first, I might take him a quarterback the very next round too. So there's an outside option in case he does fail or not perform. So
I think that's the big question when it comes to Caleb Williams this year. Are you taking him as your starter or not? So I'm glad you answered that for everybody out there, because I'm like you. I'm the same way. I just don't know if I feel comfortable taking him as my number one. I like him a lot as a top backup. And you mentioned Jaden Daniels too, so I'll kind of go in and talk about him a little bit because I like him as well. And I think for the price, I might take a chance on him as a number two, just because of his rushing upside. Like you mentioned, I think he could get 700 plus rushing yards. I worry about him because he's so thin and he's just, durability is a concern because Anthony Richardson actually is more of a durable, sturdy guy, and he got knocked out last year. So that worries me a little bit with Daniels if he can withstand the punishment. But I actually do like his talent a little bit around him. He's got Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. I just think that they're going to be playing from behind as well. So I think that bodes well for Daniels to air it out. So I don't mind taking a chance on him. I like both those rookies, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. I don't know about the rest of the class. I mean, Bo Nix, other guys as well. I don't think they're worth the risk. I think these guys are set up definitely the best out of all the rookies for sure.
Yeah, I think he. I mean, I know some people take Drake May, but I think he's going to struggle. New England, not a lot of weapons there, in my opinion. They've drafted a lot of guys, but I don't know how they're going to be with that team. So
I agree with that. Yeah, definitely a concern. All right, Brad, I appreciate you coming on and talking with me about this quarterback position. It was a lot of fun getting your insight, the way you're thinking about the position. I think it's very valuable for all of our viewers out there. And it was a lot of fun talking with you as always. And good luck in all your drafts. We know if you're drafting here at RealTime Fantasy Sports, there's a good chance you're going to be drafting with Brad. He's in a ton of drafts, and he's a great player. So good luck if you're going up against him. But Brad, I really appreciate you coming on.
problem. I appreciate you asking me. Thanks for taking.
No problem. All right, that was Brad Petri. He is the number 2 ranked player on RealTime Fantasy Sports, past winner of the Fantasy Championship as well. Just a great player, great guy, and really helped you get ready for this quarterback position for the coming year. We'll be doing all the previews with a bunch of different players from our side as well in the near future. So you'll want to stay tuned and view those because it will be certainly a lot of help for you. This has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Good luck in all of your drafts this year.